Well, you know what they say, darling, it's better down where it's wetter, right? No Little Mermaid fans here? Well, either way, we aren't here to talk about mermaids today. Instead, we are reviewing another Crab's Treasure, an aquatic Souls-like 3D platformer, and one with accessibility options? Yeah, that's right. But did this one leave me feeling crabby? Or is this one a buried treasure worth discovering? Let's find out in our full review. Hey, don't you make old gamer Joe feel like a crab though? Head on over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames and you'll gain Discord access to the greatest indie gaming community, an exclusive podcast, early ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of every single video we produce, and even free games depending on which tier you select. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. Another Crab's Treasure is an interesting entry into the Souls genre as it's a Souls-like experience with a cute underwater theme. Souls games aren't exactly known for being described as cute, but it's 2024 after all, and anything goes, right? Following what I can only describe as an intro you might have seen on the Discovery Channel, with some added humor for good measure, we are introduced to our protagonist Krill, an adorable crab who's behind on his taxes after being confronted by a literal loan shark and having his shell stolen away as compensation for his late payments. Krill goes off on a journey to recover his stolen home, and from here the story only gets stranger. Another Crab's Treasure features a decent variety of characters and entertaining writing that doesn't shy away from an underwater pun or two, or maybe even three. While it's not fully voice acted, there are moments throughout the campaign where you do get voice performances, and for the most part, they're quite good.
A platoon went out on my behalf to recover something shiny and gorgeous from the cave to the west. But those buffoons haven't reported in since.
Eventually, a main villain is introduced who ends up being my personal favorite of the entire cast, and considering how completely stupid this could have been, it's actually not a bad narrative at all. So just how does a game about a lovable crab that explores various worlds and towns through a vast ocean get tied up into the Souls-like genre, you ask? In its gameplay, of course. Another Crab's Treasure may look innocent, but it packs steep difficulty underneath its charming exterior. Gameplay consists of defeating enemy crabs, and sorry, I can't not think of Sony's infamous giant enemy crab moment from their 2006 E3 whenever I relate crabs to video games. Either way, you're exploring this massive ocean and ultimately finding a missing treasure before the bad guys do. Armed with your trusty fork, you'll bash, roll, parry, and use a variety of special abilities to take down crusty crustaceans and even crabbier bosses. Krill also does a good deal of platforming, grapple hooking, and net climbing along the way. If you've played a Souls-like game before, you'll have a pretty decent idea of what to expect out of another Crab's Treasure's combat engine. Swinging your fork is done with the right bumper should you be using an Xbox controller as I was, while holding it down longer will allow for a more powerful charged attack. This obviously leaves you a bit vulnerable, but is great for dealing out more damage. Dodging is predictably performed by pressing the B button, and just as you might have imagined, it's paramount to your success. Much of the combat comes down to rolling and striking at the right moment, with other features like a parry being introduced later on. It all feels pretty average to mediocre, to be completely honest, as encounters can often become long, slow slogs rather than quick, skillful battles. Things are even more frustrating when encounters take place on tight corridors or ledges, which is frequently the case. This can easily lead to Krill falling off of a cliff or being caught up in a group of crabs unable to mount much of an offense at all. It doesn't help that the camera isn't always perfect, and there's just so many enemies and battles, it kinda gets old after a while. But the most interesting dynamic involving combat is the game's shell system. Krill can gather up to 69, nice, different shells, all of which come with secondary abilities and unique defensive options. From soda cans to bottle caps, Krill can try on just about anything, often to hilarious effect. Shells are all weighed a bit differently from one another, but will inevitably break should you take enough damage. Heavier shells can obviously take a bit more of a beating, but they're slower. Your shell also acts as a shield that Krill can curl up into to avoid taking massive damage. I really enjoyed the creativity that went into the shell system, despite the fact that it ultimately didn't make the combat all that much more fun. Stowaways are little critters that can be equipped with your shells for other added perks, and umami are the unique magical capabilities each shell offers. Umami will need to recharge after a few uses, though I personally didn't always find them all that helpful depending on the shell I was wearing. In traditional Souls-like fashion, losing to foes means dropping all of your currency wherever you die. Running back and retrieving it is an option, of course, but should you fail on the second trip, you're gonna have a crabby day. Eventually, players will also encounter the Moon Snail Cave. In this area, you can unlock new skills, and the game's many save points allow for fast traveling between previously discovered save points while also allowing you to level Krill up statistically. Exploration is where Another Crab's Treasure impressed me a bit more. The ocean truly feels massive, and there are many living creatures and even full cities that make up this world. One town that you'll encounter a few hours in acts as your main hub where you can upgrade your fork to make it more powerful, sell off junk for loot, and buy new exclusive shells amongst other things. Locations such as these help to make Another Crab's Treasure feel immersive and lived in. The sheer size of these areas does come with a cost, however. Another Crab's Treasure features a map, but it kind of felt worthless to me personally, leading to a lot of aimless wandering. It felt like a good deal of time could have been saved with a better navigation system, but you won't really get that here, unfortunately. There is a compass, and sometimes it labels certain areas for you, but again, just wasn't all that helpful. Could have been better. But factoring everything, I really enjoyed most of the exploration and platforming in Another Crab's Treasure, but still remain convinced that Souls-like combat will never click with me personally. That said, this game did win me over with its accessibility options, which is a rare thing for this genre. Players can change everything from the parry windows to fall damage, and even take out frustrating bosses in a single shot using Krill's gun shell. Yes, badass bosses are here, and they're just as brutal as you would expect. Souls elitists may scoff at such features, but I myself welcome them. I can't count the number of times I've wanted to enjoy a Souls-like game only for the punishing difficulty to drive me away. Another Crab's Treasure proves that a balance can exist where a challenge remains for those who seek it without having to leave other players out for simply not possessing the skill or patience. This is welcome news for those of you who have always wanted to enjoy the world and lore of games such as these, but felt like you couldn't. I would love to see more games follow suit in the future. Another Crab's Treasure is definitely a strange one to start this trend, but I do hope it continues. When it comes to the visuals, I was quite impressed with its many colorful worlds, character designs, and sheer size. For a game featuring areas that feel expansive and endless at times, much like the ocean, performance was great on my 4070 at 1440p resolution, with maybe just a hitch here or there. Even more impressive, the Steam Deck handles the game brilliantly for a handheld platform. On high settings, I was a little underwhelmed, with frame rates being rather erratic, but things stabilized more at medium settings, with the low settings offering a pretty dang solid 60 FPS, a few dips here or there, but mostly quite good. And to be completely honest, the game doesn't look as awful as you would think even on the low settings. While Another Crab's Treasure has lovely animations and varied landscapes, some visual effects did leave a little bit to be desired, such as when I smashed bottles only for a couple bland textures to float off. Not a lot of animation put into that. It cuts a few corners, yes, but overall I thought the game looked great. A shame that I did run into a few bugs that left me a little crabby. There was one moment in the game where I was stuck on a cliff, unable to move, another where my controller stopped responding entirely, and even a load screen that, well, never loaded in. Thankfully, the game allows you to die wherever you are, which sounds terrible, but was useful for when cases such as these cropped up. Nothing that occurred during my time with the game was outright game-breaking and should be addressed quite easily in a patch, but it's worth noting regardless. When it comes to sound design, Another Crab's Treasure does have those great voice performances that I mentioned earlier, but also features a lovely soundtrack. Whether it was peaceful oceanic guitar or something even more subtle, the ocean truly sounds beautiful throughout. The game features a dynamic set of compositions that always seem to fit the mood perfectly. While it didn't win me over on the Souls-like genre entirely, Another Crab's Treasure is surprisingly ambitious, and that should be applauded. The combat is a bit stale for my taste and still feels cheap at times, but there are the accessibility options to help with that at the least. The world is beautiful and vast, rife with secrets to uncover as well. If you're willing to look past some ho-hum combat design, this crab offers many treasures that are worth seeking out. I am awarding Another Crab's Treasure the Bronze Genie Lamp of Approval.